everyone. Welcome to another third grade reading lesson. My name is Mrs. Kinman and I am a third grade teacher at Hebron Elementary School. I hope that you're having a great day. I'm so glad that you tuned in today, and let's get ready to read. Before we start, we always like to make sure that we're in the right mindset for learning. So let's try to focus our thoughts a little bit and think about our learning gems. Learning gems is an acronym that I love to use to make sure I'm in the right mindset for learning. I'm going to think about something I'm grateful for, something that I'm excited about, something I'm motivated to do, and a success that I can celebrate. So something that I'm grateful for is that one of the stories that we're going to be reading today, I happen to have the book with me at home. That's something I'm really grateful for because so many of my books are at school, and of course I can't get into my physical school building right now. So I was really grateful that I had this story at home because I really wanted to share it with you. I am excited to teach you because there's going to be a familiar story. In other words, it's a fairy tale I think you're going to be really familiar with, and then I'm also going to read to you a new version of it that you're probably not familiar with. I am motivated to teach you about comparing and contrasting these two different versions of the same fairy tale. That's a skill that we haven't worked yet together on, and so I'm motivated to teach you about that. And a success that I can celebrate is that at the end of this lesson, I will have worked with you on all three of the different kinds of fiction texts that are in the standard we're working on. We will have done folktale, fables, and fairy tales, and that's something we definitely can celebrate together. We want to listen to Listening Larry, and we want to have that right mindset with our whole body listening. We know that listening is not just about using our ears. We know that listening is about using our eyes. So your eyes are facing forward. You are listening with those ears. You're also listening with your mouth, meaning that whenever you are listening to me, your mouths are quiet. But when you're responding to me, I hope you're responding out loud. You don't want to keep all of your thoughts in your mind. When you can talk about your learning, that's really, really powerful. So make sure that you're talking out and talking back to me whenever I'm asking questions during the lesson, okay? You're going to listen with your hands and feet by keeping those quiet and keeping those still. You're going to listen with your body, so make sure that you're facing the speaker. And you're going to listen with your brain to be learning and thinking about what's happening in the lesson, and listening with your heart. Consider what the speaker and what the story is saying to you, and that is how you can learn best, whenever we put all these things together and we listen with our whole body. All right, so the purpose for listening to our first fairy tale today is to be able to compare and contrast this classic version with a different version of the same fairy tale. You might be familiar with Jack and the Beanstalk. It is a classic fairy tale. As you're listening, I want you to think about the plot. What are the events that are happening in the story? What happens at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the story? I also would love for you to pay attention to your reading voice, your thinking voice, and your distracting voice. This is important anytime that you are reading. Whether you are the one reading yourself or whether you're listening to someone else read like you're going to be doing today, it is so important to pay attention to your reading voices. Your reading voice is the actual voice that you hear, whether it's my voice you're hearing, whether it is the voice on the video that you're going to hear in a few moments, or whether it's your own voice in your head if you're reading a book yourself. The actual voice you're hearing is your reading voice. The other thing that you need to pay attention to while you're reading is your thinking voice. And you can see that this is a speech bubble, right? Because this is the actual voice that you hear. And this is a thought bubble. It's actually on this side. It's a thought bubble. Your thinking voice has to do with what you are thinking only about what you're reading. So you're making connections. You're thinking about the story elements. You're making predictions about what might happen next. You're connecting it to what you already know about the subject or what you already know about the story. Maybe you're predicting how it will end. Okay, your thinking voice is related to your reading voice. These two things go together. Now, I have a little bit of a trick question for you. Are you ready? What do you think is most important when you are reading? Do you do more of this? Do you do more reading? Or do you do more thinking? Which one do you do more of? I'm going to tell you, it should be your thinking voice, because you can read and read and read and read and read, but if you're not thinking about what you're reading, you're not going to remember it. You're not going to comprehend it or understand it. So these two things go together, but I just can't stress enough the importance of your thinking voice. Now, what is really important to try to totally eliminate is your distracting voice. And this looks like kind of a big kaboom, because this is any thought or any sound that doesn't have to do with your reading voice or your thinking voice. This could be a thought in your head like, I wonder when I'll get to play outside with my friends. Or it could be, I wonder if I'm going to get to go see that new movie that's in the movie theater. That's a distracting voice. Maybe it is a little brother or a little sister who's screaming in the other room. That could be a distracting voice. You have to try to push these kind of thoughts out of your head so that while you're reading, you can really focus on your reading voice and your thinking voice. All right, so that's your challenge while you're listening today, is to pay attention to those reading voices. All right, your reading voice and your thinking voice, try to eliminate that distracting voice. So the first version of this story that we're going to listen to is the classic version of Jack and the Beanstalk. Let's listen.
Meow, 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 meow. Kids these days are addicted to screen time. But what?
Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Jack who lived with his poor widowed mother. They had sold almost everything they owned to buy food. When their last cow stopped giving milk, Jack's mother sent him to town to sell it. On the way to town, Jack met a strange fellow who told him stories of magic beans. "Where can I buy some of these magic beans for my mother?" asked Jack. "I have the last 5 magic beans, and I will sell them to you because you are a good boy." The strange man smiled at Jack. "Well, I have nothing but our old cow, and we need the money I would get by selling her for food." The man replied, "Trust me, my boy. These beans will bring you food and fortune, and your mother will be proud." Jack hesitated, but finally traded the cow for the beans. When Jack returned home, his mother was furious and threw the beans out of the kitchen window crying. Jack went to bed that night, sad and hungry. He woke the next morning to find a huge beanstalk growing in the garden. "The beans really are magic," he cried. Jack saw that the stalk reached the clouds. He remembered stories about the clouds containing gold and started climbing the stalk to see what he could find. He climbed and climbed. When he got to the top, he saw a huge castle and headed for it. The door was so big that Jack could crawl beneath it. Once inside, he saw a giant man eating his dinner. When the giant was finished, he called his servant to bring him his bag of gold coins. While counting his money, the giant became drowsy and fell asleep. Jack crept up to the giant and stole his bag of gold. He struggled down the beanstalk with his money, and when he got to the bottom, he called for his mother. Jack's mother was very happy because this money was the same money that the giant had stolen from Jack's father many years ago. But she was also afraid. She knew how dangerous the giant was and made Jack promise he would never go back. While Jack did promise, after a while the money began to run out. Jack began to wonder if he would find anything else in the castle. Once again, Jack decided he would go back up the beanstalk and back to the castle. Once again he reached the castle and climbed under the castle door. And once again he found the giant eating dinner at his table. When he was finished this time, however, the giant called for his magic hen. Jack was amazed when he saw the hen lay an egg of pure gold. While the giant was watching the hen, he again became drowsy and fell asleep. Jack crept silently to the table and grabbed the hen. When he returned home, His mother was very angry that Jack had gone back to the castle. She grabbed Jack's axe, intent on cutting the beanstalk down. Jack begged her not to and showed her how the hen could lay golden eggs. Jack's mother put the axe down and watched with delight as the hen laid one beautiful golden egg after another. After a while, Jack's curiosity got the better of him, and he once again thought about what else he could find in the castle. Once again, Jack decided he would go back up the beanstalk and back to the castle. Once again, he reached the castle and climbed under the castle door. And once again, he found the giant eating dinner at his table. And once again, when he was finished this time, however, the giant called for his magic harp. Jack watched as the harp began to play beautiful music all by itself. The music was so beautiful that before long, the lazy giant once again fell fast asleep. Jack crept silently to the table, but as soon as Jack picked up the harp, it began playing very loudly in his strange hands, and the giant awoke. "Fee, fi, fo, fum," yelled the giant, and he chased after the boy and his harp. Jack raced to the beanstalk and slid down. He could feel the stalk shake as the giant began climbing down. Luckily, his axe was nearby, and he began chopping down the beanstalk. The beanstalk shook and cracked under the weight of the giant and Jack's chopping. Finally, the stalk snapped, and the giant fell to earth, never to be seen again. Jack and his mother lived happily ever after. The end.
All right, so now let's use our thinking voice. Let's think about the story that we just heard, and let's think what happens at the beginning, what happens in the middle, what happens at the end. Who are the main characters? We have Jack, we have his mother, we have the giant. What was the problem and what's the solution? Think about what their problem was and then how did they solve that problem? Those are things I want you to be thinking about. Remember, we're going to be listening to another version. You're going to think about the same things so that we can compare and contrast. All right, now the next version of the story is probably one that you're not as familiar with. It is called Jack and the Baked Beanstalk. As we listen to this story, I do want you also to think about your reading voice, which is going to be someone else's voice as they're reading to you. As you're reading, you should be thinking, what's going on at the beginning, middle, and end? How can I compare and contrast this with the first version that I heard, the original or the classic version? Pay attention to your reading voice and your thinking voice and really try to eliminate that distracting voice. Let's take a listen.
Jack lived and worked in an old burger truck with his mom and his dog, Bella. Their sign read, Jack's Fast Food, which was funny because the truck had broken down a long time ago and it had stayed in the same place ever since, parked on the edge of the busy city. Jack and his mom didn't really mind. They were proud of their little cafe. They kept the place clean, served tasty food, and always had plenty of happy customers. One winter, the city council decided to build an overpass so that more people could get to work even faster. The old road where Jack's cafe stood was to be closed. At first, things didn't seem very different. Jack and his mom were busy feeding the builders eggs and sausages, burgers and fries, and cups of coffee. But when the overpass was finally complete, the workers went away. All day long, traffic sped overhead as people hurried in and out of the city. No one stopped to visit the old burger truck anymore. The new road had swept the customers away. Soon, Jack and his mom were down to their last few pennies. "Go to the store and buy some milk and coffee beans, Jack," said Jack's mom, putting on a brave face. "Everybody likes a good cup of coffee." On his way to the store, Jack met an old man who asked him why he looked so sad. Jack explained about the overpass and his burger truck. "I think I can help you," said the old man thoughtfully. "Forget the coffee beans. These are magic baked beans. I wouldn't normally sell them, but you look like a boy who would know their true worth." Now, Jack had read enough fairy tales to know that you don't turn down an offer like that. Also, baked beans were his favorite food in the whole world, so he couldn't resist tasting some magic ones. Thanking the man, Jack exchanged his last pennies for the beans and ran home.
"You did what?" shouted his mom when Jack showed her the can. "But Mom, they're magic baked beans. The old man promised," argued Jack, realizing how silly he sounded. Furious, his mom threw the can out of the window and sent Jack straight to bed without any supper. Early the next morning, Jack woke up to find his room bathed in a curious green light. Strange branches twisted in through the window. At the end of each shoot dangled a silver can of baked beans. "It's a magic baked beanstalk," Jack whispered to Bella, trying not to wake his mother. "If I remember right, there should be heaps of treasure at the top." After hurriedly eating a breakfast of the best beans he had ever tasted, Jack crept outside. "Are you ready, Bella?" said Jack, grabbing hold of a long green tendril. "Mom will be worried when she notices we're gone. But if this really is a magic beanstalk, she'll forget about being angry when we bring her back some treasure." Up between the leaves they climbed, high into the sky. Finally, Jack and Bella reached the top, just above the clouds. The last branch wound its way to the steps of the biggest castle Jack had ever seen. Squeezing under the front door, Jack found himself in an enormous room. Suddenly, there was a bone-shaking clunk, then another, and another, followed by the sound of someone singing. "Fee-fi-fo-fummy, I'm always counting my money. Be it silver or be it gold, it'll make me happy, or so I'm told." Sure enough, Jack could see towers of gold coins stacked up in the front of a huge table, and, behind it, an even more gigantic giant. "Oh," whispered Jack, "I'd forgotten about that part of the story." But just as Jack and Bella turned to run, the giant spotted them.
A huge hand reached down and scooped Jack and Bella high up in the air before dropping them on the table. In front of them was the most enormous chicken Jack had ever seen. "We have visitors," boomed the giant. "So I see," squawked the chicken. "And we know just what to do with visitors, don't we?" said the giant. "Now you stay there. I'll be back in a jiffy." And with that the giant grabbed a handful of the chicken's eggs and marched off to his kitchen. Soon the sound of clattering pots and pans was making the table tremble. "Is he going to eat us, chicken?" squeaked Jack. "Don't be silly," cackled the chicken. "He just wants to make you some lunch. He hasn't cooked for someone new in a long, long time." As Jack watched, the giant switched on an enormous radio. Then, his foot tapping along to the sound of the music, he began to make the biggest omelette Jack had ever seen. While wonderful smells wafted into the room, the chicken told Jack about life in the castle. "Every day, all day, the giant counts his money," she clucked. "He doesn't know what else to do with himself. It's hard for the radio. She's a magic one, you know. She can only play at lunchtime because the giant needs silence when he's counting." Just then, the giant appeared. "Lunch is ready," he cried cheerfully. Over lunch, Jack told the giant all about life at the bottom of the beanstalk, and the giant told Jack about his money. Jack thought having such treasure was fantastic, but the counting sounded a bit, well, boring. I do get pretty lonely up here, confessed the giant. Would you consider staying? You could help me count and I could cook us tasty meals. Sorry, said Jack. I just couldn't leave my mom. I should be getting back. Can I come with you? Sang a small voice. Jack and the giant turned to the radio in surprise. I want to play songs all day long. And I've always wanted to stretch my wings, clucked the chicken. The giant looked glum, but agreed that his friends deserved a change after all their years in the castle.
With a heavy heart, the giant walked them all to the top of the beanstalk. Are you sure you won't come with us? Asked Jack. You could chase us. I'd love to, said the giant sadly. But truth be told, I've always been a bit afraid of heights, and it looks like a long way down. I'd better stay here and count my gold. So Jack and Bella climbed into the chicken's back and, clutching the radio, began the long journey back to the ground. Goodbye, goodbye, hollowed the giant, waving his handkerchief. Do come again soon. But as he leaned out over the beanstalk, trying to catch a last glimpse of his friends, there was suddenly a loud crack. Snap went the beanstalk, and down, down, down fell the giant, crash, bang, wallop, right on top of the new overpass. Cars skidded in all directions, but fortunately no one was hurt. Are you all right? Asked Jack, who had luckily reached the ground just in time. No, said the giant as a gigantic tear splashed into the concrete below, then another and another. Now that the beanstalk's broken, I can't go home, and without my money to count, I've got nothing to do. Whatever will become of me? It isn't so bad, said Jack thoughtfully. At least you're with your friends. Maybe if you try doing something you enjoy, you'll find it more fun than counting money. And that is the story of how the Baked Beanstalk Cafe became the famous place it is today. It's much bigger than the old place in almost every way. If you're ever passing through, do stop in. Say hello to the giant chicken or listen to the jumbo radio that plays music all day. The baked beans and eggs are always free, and to top it all, they have a very, very famous cook.
All right. Now, just like we did with the classic version of the story, let's use that thinking voice and think about what happens at the beginning, middle, and end of this version of the story. How is Jack and the Baked Beanstalk different than the classic version of the story? Who are the main characters? Are they the same or are they different? What's the problem and what's the solution? Is it the same or is it different? Let's use everything that we've been thinking about to compare and contrast these two versions of the story. We're going to organize and synthesize our thoughts to complete a Venn diagram together. Now, you probably are familiar with a Venn diagram. This circle, the yellow circle, is Jack and the Beanstalk. This orange circle is Jack and the Baked Beanstalk. Where they overlap in the middle and make kind of this marigold color, that is where we would be comparing, putting things that happen in both stories. Things that only happen in Jack and the Beanstalk would go over here, and things that only happen in Jack and the Baked Beanstalk would go over here. Now I'm going to go over to the computer so that we can sort our statements into the right spot. Okay, so let's start over here. Jack sold his cow for some magic beans. Well, that is something that happened in Jack and the Beanstalk. So I'm going to put that statement here. Jack used his last pennies to buy some magic baked beans. That is something that happened in Jack and the Baked Beanstalk. How about this statement? A giant stalk grows from magic beans and leads Jack to a giant. Well, that's something that happened in both versions of the story, isn't it? So I'm going to drag it and put it right here in the middle. The main characters are Jack, Mom, and a giant. That's also something that happened in both stories. So we're going to put that right here in the middle. The giant is kind and lonely. That is only true of Jack and the baked beanstalk. Because in the original version, the giant is angry and mean. So we're going to put that statement over here. Now let's think about the moral. The moral of the story is that following directions the first time will keep you out of trouble. That's something that happened in Jack and the Beanstalk. And the moral of the story is that having friends and doing things that you enjoy are important things in life. That is the moral of Jack and the Baked Beanstalk. So now we have sorted those thoughts about both of those stories and organized them in a Venn diagram. Now we're going to get ready to check for some understanding. In order to do that, we have 2 questions, and you're going to need your fist in order to respond, okay? So hold your fist up, show me that you're ready. I'll read the question. If you think the answer is A, you're going to hold up 1 finger. If you think the answer is B, you'll hold up 2 fingers. And if you think the answer is C, you'll hold up 3 fingers. Ready? Let's start. In both stories, which character traits describe Jack? A, lazy and uncooperative, B, rude and uncertain, or C, quick thinking and brave. Ready? 1, 2, 3, respond. You should be holding up 3 fingers. Jack was definitely quick thinking and brave in both versions of that story. In both stories, what motivates Jack to get the magic beans or baked beans? Choose all that apply. So for this one, you're going to need both fists up because you're actually going to have 2 responses, okay? 1 on each hand. Are you ready? A, he and his mother are poor and hungry. B, Jack is curious about the beans. Or C, Jack's mother told him to get the beans. Ready? 1, 2, 3, respond. You should be holding up 1 finger on one hand and 2 fingers on the other hand because both A and B are reasons or motivations for Jack to get those magic beans. Very good. So a next step would be for you to retell the story. Use what you remember from that reading voice and thinking voice to retell the story. Use beginning, middle, and end and tell it to someone that's in your house with you. You also could write or talk about how these lessons apply to you in your everyday life. And another thing you could do is pretend that you are Jack and that you discovered your magic beans grew a beanstalk. What would you want to find at the top? The ideas are limitless, and I know that you can come up with some really good ones. Fantastic work today. If you watch this lesson, you're going to need your code word to tell your teacher. Today's code word is magic. That's what fairy tales are all about, is magic. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.